Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. Happy Saturday. This one will be a little bit of a heavy one with some alarming information, but also a silver lining. And buckle in, wear your seatbelts. Thank you as well to the mods in chat, T&D, Tesla, and Sean for coming, and everybody else. And of course, Solar, Bitcoin, and Coffee. Appreciate you. Happy Saturday. Crypto market cap 2.33 trillion. Literally, it's been flat for weeks. We'll talk about the volatility. Volume low, 52 billion. Fear and greed, what is it? 67, I think. But today is a serious one. I'm going to share some alarming data, but we'll make it through. And I think, as some people say, we are at the fight you stage of the world right now as well. HS1 and Criticalis. I really appreciate all this. We make a big difference. And we'll update our sponsorship video as well soon with hundreds and hundreds of our furry friends. And thank you to everyone on Patreon. Bitcoin only playlist will be here. Well, check out my playlist. I'll probably forget to add it. I'm on my own on the weekends. And historic reasons. This is what I'm going to talk about. Bitcoin is that asset where no matter where you are, no matter what period you are in, there's always something that hits it. But it always survives. So let's look at some of the history. I threw together a quick mind map of some of the stuff that we've gone through from the early days. Even before, and by the way, since I started this, Bitcoin shot up $600 at 63,500. You can't keep this thing down. But we have all the reasons for massive price fluctuations. We've got technical scares like halvings, and hard forks, and ordinals and NFTs and Taproot. Then you have reasons for things really driving adoption, like El Salvador institution investment, PayPal support, Tesla purchase, Japan legalizing Bitcoin, Bitcoin futures, ETF launch, etc. Then you got other scares, Terra, peak 2017, FTX collapse, Fed hikes, wars, C19, you name it. And then you have SEC ETF rejections and Facebook ad bans and BitLicense, China ICO bans, China mining bans, China bans, and now China's coming in on Tuesday. How amazing is that? I hope is they have a lot of money. And then other historic events. You know, this thing goes back to 2009, which is incredible. We've got 15 years in now. And then you've got the Dow hack, Silk Road, Mt. Gox hack. And today we've got some new scares. And by the way, that's not comprehensive. I'm probably missing a few things that I forgot. Let me know if I did forget anything big. But here, the shout out to Lynn Alden. It's increasingly the case that a lot of good Bitcoin apps work in dozens of other countries, but not in the United States. The US is kind of slowly firewalling itself from the rest of the world in terms of financial innovation, and more importantly, financial freedom. The fight you stage, as I mentioned at the beginning, is happening. Dylan Leclerc also believes maybe it's time to make a stand. Non-custodial Lightning wallet shutting down in the US after recent announcements from US authorities. Software is free speech. Bitcoin is free speech. Is it now time to make a stand? And if not now, when? Because the walls are closing in. And it's kind of crazy and a little bit scary. But I will be doing a detailed video tomorrow, a part of the Q&A, as to how you can opt out of this draconian system. Coming. Stay tuned for that. Also, shout out to Crypto T. The FBI calls crypto money so they can arrest you for money laundering. The IRS calls it property so they can tax you on capital gains. The SEC calls it a security so they can sue every exchange. And the CFTC calls it a commodity so you can't use it as a currency. It's like, what? I always picture myself as an alien looking down and looking at this. And it just shows you they're definitely in the fight you stage. And then the latest scare caused for the dip in price yesterday. And shout out to all the people that are still not fully on board the train, but they managed to buy close to 62,000 yesterday. I personally was a buyer at 61K and 60K a week or so ago, but it's getting juicy now. But the DTCC came in and scared everybody. No collateral value will be given for any ETF or other investment vehicle that includes Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency as an underlying investment. Hence, will be subject to a 100% haircut. The way this is written is kind of bizarre, kind of crazy. But the point is, nobody in this space was actually getting the ability to use Bitcoin as collateral. So it's a bit of a nothing burger, if you ask me. Now, in the future, it will. And I do know ultra high net worth people can borrow against their Bitcoin. There's other shaky places where you can do it, but I don't know if I trust them entirely right now. But the point is, there is still a glitch out there. And this is the infinite money glitch, aka MicroStrategy. Technically, collateral's there, maintenance, and you can also lend out your stock if you want to those short sellers, which could get toasted next week with MicroStrategy earnings. More on that later too. Not in this video, but in a separate video, but that's exciting. And check my Patreon post as well from yesterday regarding that. It's looking pretty good. But the question is, what happened? Why did all the ETFs suddenly hit the pause button last week, and why did they withdraw? Did they know about this DTCC thing? Did they know about the government closing in on these wallets? Seems a bit suspicious. Shout out to Larry Fink. Awesome fellow. But you know, they get wind of stuff way before us plebs do. We can normally front run them, but sometimes we can't, especially when they got a direct line to the government. Just surmising here. Again, tinfoil hat on. Probably none of this is even happening, but it's important to think these ways too. Now, there is some good news after all that bad news, everybody. I did warn you to wear your seatbelt. Bank in New York, Mellon, now has ETF exposure. And this is the world's largest custodian bank. They basically hold stuff for people, including Bitcoin, which is very big news. But speaking of banks, another big bank hit the wall yesterday. This is Republic First, not First Republic that hit the wall last year, but officially collapsed. It's Philly-based, and I think working in New Jersey and New York. I'm not quite sure, but they had about $6 billion in assets. It's a top 250 bank, so it's pretty sizable. Are we seeing signs of banking crisis 2.0 like we saw in March 2023? Perhaps, because we know a lot of these banks, some of them are large, commercial, regional banks have exposure to commercial real estate and the interest rate long-term duration risk as well, and so much more. A lot of defaults, a lot of crazy things are happening. So the bank's going to suffer and more will hit the wall. That is for sure. Now, speaking of regulation and laws, shout out to the team in Oklahoma and, of course, Dennis Porter. He spoke about a state called Oklahoma, and a bill to protect fundamental Bitcoin rights has passed in the Senate and the House in the state of Oklahoma. The right to self-custody, the right to mine Bitcoin, the right to run a full node, and the right to buy, sell, and trade digital assets. And a shout out to Representative Brian Hill. So there will be these two sides, and we've been talking about this for years now at this stage. One side will be pro, the other side will be against. If you are against as we go forward, you will lose. And I don't care what country you are in. If you're in Australia, the Netherlands, Germany, UK, Brazil, Argentina, US, Canada, being against crypto will nail your coffin shut. Maybe not in the next year, but definitely in the future, because digital asset penetration is happening quickly. Now, let's get into a couple of quick charts, and we'll go over all of the good stuff, including some more alarming news. So seatbelts, please. Coiling up. This is some good news from TechDev. He's looking at a chart here. This is a 2-month candle, and it's right on the body high. There's a couple of things that I pick up from this is historically when we were in this situation, you get a thing called compression. And the chart shows the historical price movement of Bitcoin from 2011 all the way up to 2025, which is in the future, of course. We don't know the price action there, but along with technical indicators, it shows you that the relative strength index, RSI, and Bollinger Bands here. Now, based on the chart, this Bitcoin has experienced several cycles. You can see, look at the red arrows, and look what happens after we get a red arrow. And right before the red arrow is a thing called compression. And that is compression where we bounce up against the top of the Bollinger Band. The question is, after this little correction that we've had right now, the pattern could maybe be considered a very bullish signal as we go forward. The question is this a potential trend reversal and a buildup of positive momentum? And additionally, the price is broken or is about to break above that Bollinger Band, which is always a bullish signal. That's a breakout. So the question is, what will happen next? We don't know. But there's some strange things happening. Normally, before a breakout, there is calm before the storm, and that can be seen here in this volatility chart. This is Bitcoin volatility time series, and you can see it is not volatile at all. Despite the fact we've gone up a lot compared to history, things are very, very quiet. Now, the fact of the matter is, the reason I do these Bitcoin dailies is the ETFs have had a huge impact over the last 74 trading days on the price of Bitcoin. But shout out to Econometrics, beautiful chart here. When there's no demand from the Bitcoin ETFs, there is no pump. And that's a simple fact of life. But we might be getting some new demand for Bitcoin coming out of Asia starting Monday night my time. And I'll be sitting here with hope, maybe a beer, and seeing if there's any action. Or if this weekend, if there's any front running. Because, as I say, weekends are good for Bitcoin. We are in the weekend. That means we go up. That's how it works. Despite the ETFs being crap, there are other people out there accumulating right now. And now, speaking of liquidation games too, you can see from this chart here, there was a wick down, a very vicious, aggressive wick during the night last night. Took us down to 62,400. Shout out to all those who sniped that layer. And it did take out a lot of leverage longs. But it's been a while since they've gone after the leverage shorts. We'll see if that's going to happen soon as well. Now, a little bit of macro news, because this is why we Bitcoin. Let's check this out. Shout out to Sanjay as well for sharing with me. This is the U.S. annual interest payments. They're at heading to 1.2 trillion, and maybe 1.7 trillion in very short order. 1.7 trillion is the full salaries of 34 million people in the U.S. before any taxes. That's how much $1.7 trillion is. The full average salary of 34 million Americans. And remember, less than half of Americans actually work. So that's a big chunk of change. But what's going on here? What exactly is going on, and why is this getting so critical right now? We are not in a recession. We are not in a war. Technically, maybe a couple of proxy wars or something happening around the place. But we shouldn't be throwing up these crazy deficits and these crazy interest rates. Now, this takes us back to fiat. So no matter where you are in the world, your fiat is going down against Bitcoin. So this is Zimbabwe. And this illustrates the shockingly high inflation rate that Zimbabwe has. Sky high. 2,486% a year. Let's call that 2,500%. And I feel bad for the people holding their fiat because they are absolutely getting completely smashed. And these extreme levels of inflation are truly horrifying because they erode the purchasing power of money at an astonishing pace. Now, at this rate, the Zimbabwe dollar is diminishing, making it impossible for citizens to afford basic goods and services. And remember, this is not just Zimbabwe where this is happening. This is probably one of the worst right now on the planet, but there's more stuff going on. Japanese yen, we talked about that earlier this week. They have a huge crisis on their doorstep. They can no longer keep the kind of tight range of the yen to the dollar, and that is hurting Japan right now big time. Thank you, Metagirl. But there is one company in Japan that is doing the MicroStrategy playbook. This is super interesting. This is Metaplanet _JP. They soared after they bought 1 billion yen worth of Bitcoin to its balance sheet. That is a nice bag. Still a little bit less than what the ETFs dumped last week. But again, when is the time going to come where other Japanese firms and other firms around the world know that their fiat is in a crisis and they have cash? When are they going to deploy into Bitcoin? When? Okay. It's a no-brainer strategy. When? When that game theory starts to hit and starts to snowball, you're all going to be very happy. So let's talk about some other currencies that are also in a little bit of hot water right now. This is a live race of British pound and the euro racing down the street to see which one will clap first. We don't know, but literally when I talk about the US macro stuff with interest and debt and deficits, it's actually as bad or worse over there right now. So again, the US is a microcosm of what's happening all over the planet at the same time. Let's look at some US debt here too. We are now nearly 35 trillion in debt. That's $266,000 per taxpayer. US money supply is $20.6 trillion. That's going to go up. It has to go up. But most importantly, the unfunded liabilities are $215 trillion. Okay, that's $638,000 per citizen. And that's going up every single second as we speak. There's no slowdown. I threw together a little table of some of this data, which again is growing like crazy. Hey, Team Canada up there. Yeah, we're seeing it in Canada too. We're seeing it in Germany and the EU and the ECB and the Bank of England, and it's all crazy. But just sharing some numbers, and I keep on having to update this because they go up so fast. The average tax paid per citizen in the US is $15,000 today. So each citizen would have to pay all their taxes for 120 years to pay this off, and assuming no further interest or deficit. But look at the unfunded liabilities. That's bonkers. The liability per taxpayer is $1.8 million. Okay? And that average taxpayer pays $15,000 a year in taxes. Again, we are way beyond the point of no return, and hyperinflation is coming because they have to increase the M2 money supply to cover this. It's bonkers. This is why we Bitcoin. And there's a lot of people out there who want the $100,000 Bitcoin as quickly as possible. And I think it was, I covered it yesterday. We can expect a sideways chop for the next month. Maybe less, depending on how much money comes out of Asia and depending if the bleed stops for Grayscale. All right? Everybody's waiting to see now what happens post-halving. A lot of Bitcoiners are very unhappy. Where's my 100,000? But one thing I promise you, $100,000 Bitcoin will come because of this. It's a foregone conclusion. Now, that doesn't mean that $100,000 Bitcoin will be worth $100,000 because you're debasing your fiat quicker than you can imagine. So let's jump into some more charts. What's happening with the ETFs? Bitcoin black hole time. Day 74 in the box. 74 trading days since January 11th. Mad. We look down there and you can see, yes, another orange day, but not a red day. Let me see. Thursday, minus 217 million. Yesterday, minus 83. Not too bad. But the question is, how? How does BlackRock trade $1 billion a day and not add or delete any Bitcoin? All right? So, go back to this image here. How? Question everything, everybody. Find the answer. I have the answer. I'll share it in another video. I'm just fine-tuning my theories about this. Now, ETF macro update. You can see here, it's good to see the green go up a little bit. That's the grayscale dumpage. But everybody else has left the building. The other ETFs have left the building, and the question is why? Did they leave because they got wind of this? Or the shutting down of wallets, this? You know, the hits come, and maybe these investors left the building because they knew what was happening. Let's look at the money flow. Money flow is down. That pink line is the trend line. But we did have the little peak up, but we are below trend, and that is not good. We have been below trend now pretty much for the last 20 days, 20 trading days, which is a month. So something tells me the money, the big money, the smart money, the Wall Street money knew something was going to happen. I don't think they were that fearful of the halving, but they were fearful of other moves made by the US government to constrain what's going on. And some people also have a theory that, you know, they want retail investors to put all their Bitcoin into the ETFs and then one day confiscate all the ETFs. It's a real conspiracy theory, but I don't think BlackRock could do that. Who knows? Anyway, important to have a go bag, as I always stress. Now, this is the total money flow. You can see it's pretty down, as I said. Since day 46, a lot of negative days. We had a bright spot on day 52, but apart from that, it's been pretty crummy. So the question is, why did they leave the building? Because there's no pump unless the ETFs are buying. But again, that could change Monday night, Tuesday, if Asia comes in hard, or if they're going to seed their bags over the weekend. And also, it's been surprising to me, despite the huge ETF dumpage, and I covered it in yesterday's video, Bitcoin price is holding up kind of well. Now, we still have $32.5 billion into the 9 new ETFs, so they have been a huge success, and 535,000 Bitcoin are in these puppies already. Just these 9 new ones, over 830,000 in total across all ETF programs on the planet, which is big. Grayscale Drainage trend is still up, and it's nice to see the dumpage was only 82.4 million yesterday, and it's above that pink purpley trend line, and I hope it'll continue. That tells us, if you forecast that forward, the dumpage can only continue for so much more long, like maybe 60 days, 100 trading days. And I do believe that once they get around to that 200,000 Bitcoin level, another 100,000 to flush, the selling has to cease. And that's been my theory for a while. So we'll watch for that very carefully. And finally, we had 1,296 Bitcoin added to the system. That is basically 3 times daily issuance. So that is the story today. And I'll be back in a couple of hours with what happened this week. And there's some more, again, good and bad news too. So thank you so much. Thank you to the mods for being here. Hope you enjoy the show. And we have 4,500 people watching live, which is not bad for a Saturday. And Bitcoin is just above 63,000. Thank you once again to the mods in the chat, and Criticalis in Switzerland, and everybody out there. Have a good day. See you later. Bye-bye.